Chapter 16. All the rooms of the summer villa were full of porters, gardeners, and footmen going to and fro carrying out things. Cupboards and chests were open. Twice they had sent to the shop for cord. Pieces of newspaper were tossing about on the floor. 2 trunks, some bags, and strapped-up rugs had been carried down into the hall. The carriage and 2 hired cabs were waiting at the steps. Anna, forgetting her inward agitation in the work of packing, was standing at a table in her boudoir, packing her traveling bag, when Anushka called her attention to the rattle of some carriage driving up. Anna looked out of the window and saw Alexey Alexandrovich's courier on the steps, ringing at the front doorbell. "Run and find out what it is," she said, and with a calm sense of being prepared for anything, she sat down in a low chair, folding her hands on her knees. A footman brought in a thick packet directed in Alexey Alexandrovich's hand. "The courier has orders to wait for an answer," he said. "Very well," she said, and as soon as he left the room she tore open the letter with trembling fingers. A roll of unfolded notes done up in a wrapper fell out of it. She disengaged the letter and began reading it at the end. "Preparations shall be made for your arrival here. I attach particular significance to compliance," she read. She ran on, then back, read it all through, and once more read the letter all through from the beginning. When she had finished, she felt that she was cold all over, and that a fearful calamity, such as she had not expected, had burst upon her. In the morning, she had regretted that she had spoken to her husband, and wished for nothing so much as that those words could be unspoken. And here this letter regarded them as unspoken, and gave her what she had wanted. But now this letter seemed to her more awful than anything she had been able to conceive. "He's right," she said. "Of course, he's always right. He's a Christian. He's generous. Yes, vile, base creature. And no one understands it except me, and no one ever will. And I can't explain it. They say he's so religious, so high-principled, so upright, so clever. But they don't see what I've seen. They don't know how he has crushed my life for 8 years, crushed everything that was living in me. He has not once even thought that I'm a live woman who must have love. They don't know how at every step he's humiliated me and been just as pleased with himself. Haven't I striven with all my strength to find something to give meaning to my life? Haven't I struggled to love him, to love my son when I could not love my husband? But the time came when I knew that I couldn't cheat myself any longer, that I was alive, that I was not to blame, that God has made me so that I must love and live. And now what does he do? If he killed me, if he'd killed him, I could have borne anything. I could have forgiven anything. But no, how was it I didn't guess what he would do? He's doing just what's characteristic of his mean character. He'll keep himself in the right, while me, in my ruin, he'll drive still lower to worse ruin yet. She recalled the words from the letter. "You can conjecture what awaits you and your son. That's a threat to take away my child, and most likely by their stupid law he can. But I know very well why he says it. He doesn't believe even in my love for my child. He despises that feeling in me. But he knows that I won't abandon my child, that I can't abandon my child, that there could be no life for me without my child, even with him whom I love. But that if I abandoned my child and ran away from him, I should be acting like the most infamous, basest of women. He knows that, and knows that I am incapable of doing that. She recalled another sentence in the letter. Our life must go on as it has done in the past. That life was miserable enough in the old days. It has been awful of late. What will it be now? And he knows all that. He knows that I can't repent, that I breathe, that I love. He knows that it can lead to nothing but lying and deceit, but he wants to go on torturing me. I know him. I know that he is at home and is happy in deceit, like a fish swimming in the water. No, I won't give him that happiness. I'll break through the spiderweb of lies in which he wants to catch me, come what may. Anything's better than lying and deceit. But how, my God, was ever a woman so miserable as I am? No, I will break through it. I will break through it, she cried, jumping up and keeping back her tears. And she went to the writing table to write him another letter. But at the bottom of her heart she felt that she was not strong enough to break through anything, that she was not strong enough to get out of her old position, however false and dishonorable it might be. She sat down at the writing table, but instead of writing, she clasped her hands on the table and, laying her head on them, burst into tears, with sobs and heaving breast like a child crying. She was weeping that her dream of her position being made clear and definite had been annihilated forever. She knew beforehand that everything would go on in the old way, and far worse indeed than in the old way. She felt that the position in the world that she enjoyed, and that had seemed to her of so little consequence in the morning, that this position was precious to her, that she would not have the strength to exchange it for the shameful position of a woman who has abandoned husband and child to join her lover, that however much she might struggle, she could not be stronger than herself. She would never know freedom and love, but would remain forever a guilty wife, with the menace of detection hanging over her at every instant, deceiving her husband for the sake of a shameful connection with a man living apart and away from her, whose life she could never share. She knew that this was how it would be, and at the same time it was so awful that she could not even conceive what it would end in. And she cried without restraint, as children cry when they are punished. The sound of the footman's step forced her to rouse herself, and hiding her face from him, she pretended to be writing. The courier asks if there's an answer, the footman announced. An answer? Yes, said Anna. Let him wait. I'll ring. What can I write? She thought. What can I decide upon alone? What do I know? What do I want? What is there I care for? Again she felt that her soul was beginning to be split in two. She was terrified again at this feeling, and clutched at the first pretext for doing something which might divert her thoughts from herself. I ought to see Alexey. So she called Vronsky in her thoughts. No one but he can tell me what I ought to do. I'll go to Betsy's. Perhaps I shall see him there, she said to herself, completely forgetting that when she had told him the day before that she was not going to Princess Vronsky's, he had said that in that case he should not go either. She went up to the table and wrote to her husband, I have received your letter. A. And ringing the bell, gave it to the footman. We are not going, she said to Anushka as she came in. Not going at all? No. Don't unpack till tomorrow, and let the carriage wait. I'm going to the princess's. Which dress am I to get ready? Chapter 17. The croquet party to which the Princess Vrskaya had invited Anna was to consist of 2 ladies and their adorers. These 2 ladies were the chief representatives of a select New Petersburg circle, nicknamed, in imitation of some imitation, les 7 merveilles du monde, or the 7 wonders of the world. These ladies belonged to a circle which, though of the highest society, was utterly hostile to that in which Anna moved. Moreover, Stremov, one of the most influential people in Petersburg, and the elderly admirer of Lisa Merkalova, was Alexey Alexandrovitch's enemy in the political world. From all these considerations, Anna had not meant to go, and the hints in Princess Vrskaya's note referred to her refusal. But now Anna was eager to go, in the hope of seeing Vronsky. Anna arrived at the princess's earlier than the other guest. At the same moment as she entered, Vronsky's footman, with side whiskers combed out like a kammerjunker, went in too. He stopped at the door, and taking off his cap, let her pass. Anna recognized him, and only then recalled that Vronsky had told her the day before that he would not come. Most likely he was sending a note to say no. As she took off her outer garment in the hall, she heard the footman, pronouncing his R's even like a kammerjunker, say, "From the Count, for the princess," and hand the note. She longed to question him as to where his master was. She longed to turn back and send him a letter to come and see her, or to go herself to see him. But neither the first, nor the second, nor the third course was possible. Already she heard bells ringing to announce her arrival ahead of her, and Princess Vrskaya's footman was standing at the open door waiting for her to go forward into the inner rooms. "The princess is in the garden. They will inform her immediately. Would you be pleased to walk into the garden?" announced another footman in another room. The position of uncertainty, of indecision, was still the same as at home. Worse, in fact, since it was impossible to take any step, impossible to see Vronsky, and she had to remain here among outsiders, in company so uncongenial to her present mood. But she was wearing a dress that she knew suited her. She was not alone. All around was that luxurious setting of idleness that she was used to, and she felt less wretched than at home. She was not forced to think what she was to do. Everything would be done of itself. On meeting Betsy coming towards her in a white gown that struck her by its elegance, Anna smiled at her just as she always did. Princess Vrskaya was walking with Dushkevich and a young lady, a relation, who, to the great joy of her parents in the provinces, was spending the summer with the fashionable princess. There was probably something unusual about Anna, for Betsy noticed it at once. "I slept badly," answered Anna, looking intently at the footman who came to meet them, and, as she supposed, brought Vronsky's note. "How glad I am that you've come," said Betsy. "I'm tired, and was just longing to have some tea before they come. You might go," she turned to Dushkevich, "with Masha, and try the croquet ground over there where they've been cutting it. We shall have time to talk a little over tea. We'll have a cozy chat," she said in English to Anna, with a smile, pressing her hand. "Yes, especially as I can't stay very long with you. I'm forced to go on to old Madame Vrede. I've been promising to go for a century," said Anna, to whom lying, alien as it was to her nature, had become not merely simple and natural in society, but a positive source of satisfaction. Why she said this, which she had not thought of a second before, she could not have explained. She had said it simply from the reflection that as Vronsky would not be there, she had better secure her own freedom and try to see him somehow. But why she spoke of old Madame Vrede, whom she had to go and see, as she had to see many other people, she could not have explained. And yet, as it afterwards turned out, had she contrived the most cunning devices to meet Vronsky, she could have thought of nothing better. "No, I'm not going to let you go for anything," answered Betsy, looking intently into Anna's face. "Really, if I were not fond of you, I should feel offended. One would think you were afraid my society would compromise you. Tea in the little dining room, please," she said, half closing her eyes, as she always did when addressing a footman. Taking the note from him, she read it. "Alexey is playing us false," she said in French. "He writes that he can't come," she added in a tone as simple and natural as though it could never enter her mind that Vronsky could mean anything more to Anna than a game of croquet. Anna knew that Betsy knew everything, but hearing how she spoke of Vronsky before her, she almost felt persuaded for a minute that she knew nothing. "Ah," said Anna indifferently, as though not greatly interested in the matter, and she went on smiling. "How can you or your friends compromise anyone?" This playing with words, this hiding of a secret, had a great fascination for Anna, as it had indeed for many of these society women. And it was not the necessity of concealment, not the aim with which the concealment was contrived, but the process of concealment itself which attracted her. "I can't be more Catholic than the Pope," she said. "Stremov and Lisa Merkalova, why, they're the cream of society. Besides, they're received everywhere, and she laid special stress on the I, have never been strict and intolerant. It's simply that I haven't the time." "No, you don't care, perhaps, to meet Stremov? Let him and Alexey Alexandrovitch tilt at each other in the committee. That's no affair of ours. But in the world, he's the most amiable man I know, and a devoted croquet player. You shall see. And in spite of his absurd position as Lisa's lovesick swain at his age, you ought to see how he carries off the absurd position. He's very nice." "Sappho Schultz, you don't know? Oh, that's a new type, quite new." Betsy said all this, and at the same time, from her good-humored, shrewd glance, Anna felt that she partly guessed her plight, and was hatching something for her benefit. They were in the little boudoir. "I must write to Alexey, though," and Betsy sat down at the table, scribbled a few lines, and put the note in an envelope. "I'm telling him to come to dinner. I've one lady extra to dinner with me, and no man to take her in. Look at what I've said. Will that persuade him? Excuse me, I must leave you for just a minute. Will you seal it up, please, and send it off?" she said from the door. "I have to give some directions." Without a moment's thought, Anna sat down to the table with Betsy's letter, and without reading it, wrote below, "It's essential for me to see you. Come to the Vrede garden. I shall be there at 6 o'clock. She sealed it up, and Betsy, coming back, in her presence handed the note to be taken. At tea, which was brought them on a little tea-table in the cool little drawing-room, the cozy chat promised by Princess Verskaya before the arrival of the visitors really did come off between the two women. They criticized the people they were expecting, and the conversation fell upon Lisa Merkalova. "She's very sweet, and I always liked her," said Anna. "You ought to like her. She raves about you. Yesterday she came up to me after the races and was in despair at not finding you. She says you're a real heroine of romance, and that if she were a man she would do all sorts of mad things for your sake. Stremov says she does that as it is." But do tell me, please. I never could make it out, said Anna, after being silent for some time, speaking in a tone that showed she was not asking an idle question, but that what she was asking was of more importance to her than it should have been. Do tell me, please, what are her relations with Prince Galushki, Mishka, as he's called? I've met them so little. What does it mean? Betsy smiled with her eyes and looked intently at Anna. It's a new manner, she said. They've all adopted that manner. They've flung their caps over the windmills, but there are ways and ways of flinging them. Yes, but what are her relations precisely with Galushki? Betsy broke into unexpectedly mirthful and irrepressible laughter, a thing which rarely happened with her. You're encroaching on Princess Mayakaya's special domain now. That's the question of an enfant terrible. And Betsy obviously tried to restrain herself, but could not, and went off into peals of that infectious laughter that people laugh who do not laugh often. You'd better ask them, she brought out between tears of laughter. No, you laugh, said Anna, laughing too in spite of herself. But I never could understand it. I can't understand the husband's role in it. The husband? Lisa Merkalova's husband carries her shawl and is always ready to be of use. But anything more than that, in reality, no one cares to inquire. You know, in decent society, one doesn't talk or even think of certain details. That's how it is with this. Will you be at Madame Rolanduk's fete? Answered Anna to change the conversation. I don't think so, answered Betsy, and without looking at her friend, she began filling the little transparent cups with fragrant tea. Putting a cup before Anna, she took out a cigarette, and fitting it into a silver holder, she lighted it. It's like this, you see. I'm in a fortunate position, she began, quite serious now as she took up her cup. I understand you, and I understand Lisa. Lisa now is one of those naive natures that, like children, don't know what's good and what's bad. Anyway, she didn't comprehend it when she was very young, and now she's aware that the lack of comprehension suits her. Now, perhaps, she doesn't know on purpose, said Betsy with a subtle smile. But anyway, it suits her. The very same thing, don't you see, may be looked at tragically and turned into a misery, or it may be looked at simply and even humorously. Possibly you are inclined to look at things too tragically. How I should like to know other people just as I know myself, said Anna, seriously and dreamily. Am I worse than other people, or better? I think I'm worse. An enfant terrible, repeated Betsy. But here they are. Chapter 18. They heard the sound of steps and a man's voice, then a woman's voice and laughter, and immediately thereafter there walked in the expected guest, Sappho Schultz, and a young man beaming with an excess of health, the so-called Vaska. It was evident that ample supplies of beefsteak, truffles, and burgundy never failed to reach him at the fitting hour. Vaska bowed to the two ladies and glanced at them, but only for 1 second. He walked after Sappho into the drawing-room and followed her about as though he were chained to her, keeping his sparkling eyes fixed on her as though he wanted to eat her. Sappho Schultz was a blonde beauty with black eyes. She walked with smart little steps in high-heeled shoes and shook hands with ladies vigorously like a man. Anna had never met this new star of fashion and was struck by her beauty, the exaggerated extreme to which her dress was carried, and the boldness of her manners. On her head there was such a superstructure of soft golden hair, her own and false mixed, that her head was equal in size to the elegantly rounded bust of which so much was exposed in front. The impulsive abruptness of her movements was such that at every step the lines of her knees and the upper part of her legs were distinctly marked under her dress, and the question involuntarily rose to the mind where, in the undulating piled-up mountain of material at the back, the real body of the woman, so small and slender, so naked in front, and so hidden behind and below, actually came to an end. Betsy made haste to introduce her to Anna. "Only fancy, we all but ran over 2 soldiers," she began telling them at once, using her eyes, smiling and twitching away her tail, which she flung back at one stroke all on one side. "I drove here with Vaska. To be sure, don't you know each other?" And mentioning his surname, she introduced the young man, and, reddening a little, broke into a ringing laugh at her mistake, that is, at having called him Vaska to a stranger. Vaska bowed once more to Anna, but he said nothing to her. He addressed Sappho. "You've lost your bet. We got here first. Pay up," he said, smiling. Sappho laughed still more festively. "Oh, not just now," said she. "All right, I'll have it later." "Oh, yes." She turned suddenly to Princess Betsy. "I am a nice person. I positively forgot it. I've brought you a visitor, and here he comes." The unexpected visitor, whom Sappho had invited and whom she had forgotten, was, however, a personage of such consequence that, in spite of his youth, both the ladies rose on his entrance. He was a new admirer of Sappho's. He now dogged her footsteps like Vaska. Soon after, Prince Galuski arrived, and Lisa Merkalova with Streamov. Lisa Merkalova was a thin brunette, and, as everyone used to say, exquisitely enigmatic eyes. The tone of her dark dress, Anna immediately observed and appreciated the fact, was in perfect harmony with her style of beauty. Lisa was as soft as Sappho was abrupt, but to Anna's taste, Lisa was far more attractive. Betsy had said to Anna that she had adopted the pose of an innocent child, but when Anna saw her, she felt that this was not the truth. She really was both innocent and corrupt, but a sweet and passive woman. It is true that her tone was the same as Sappho's, that like Sappho she had 2 men, one young and one old, tacked onto her, and devouring her with their eyes. But there was something in her higher than that what surrounded her. There was in her the glow of the real diamond among glass imitations. This glow shone out in her exquisite, truly enigmatic eyes. The weary and at the same time passionate glance of those eyes, encircled by dark rings, impressed one by its perfect sincerity. Everyone looking into those eyes fancied he knew her wholly, and knowing her, could not help but love her. At the sight of Anna, her whole face lighted up at once with a smile of delight. "Ah, how glad I am to see you," she said, going up to her. "Yesterday at the races all I wanted was to get to you, but you had gone away. I did so want to see you, yesterday especially." "Wasn't it awful?" she said, looking at Anna with eyes that seemed to lay bare all her soul. Yes, I had no idea it would be so thrilling, said Anna, blushing. The company got up at this moment to go into the garden. I'm not going, said Lisa, smiling and settling herself close to Anna. You won't go either, will you? Who wants to play croquet? Oh, I like it, said Anna. There, how do you manage never to be bored by things? It's delightful to look at you. You're alive, but I'm bored. How can you be bored? Why, you live in the liveliest set in Petersburg, said Anna. Possibly the people who are not of our set are even more bored, but I certainly, are not happy, but awfully, awfully bored. Sappho, smoking a cigarette, went off into the garden with the two young men. Betsy and Stremov remained at tea table. What? Bored? Said Betsy. Sappho says they did enjoy themselves tremendously at your house last night. Oh, how dreary it all was, said Lisa. We all drove back to my place after the races, and always the same people, always the same thing. We lounged about on sofas all evening. What is there to enjoy in that? No, do tell me how you manage never to be bored, she said, addressing Anna again. One has but to look at you and one sees. Here's a woman who may be happy or unhappy, but isn't bored. Tell me how you do it. I do nothing, answered Anna, blushing at these searching questions. That's the best way, Stremov put in. Stremov was a man of 50, partly gray, but still vigorous-looking, very ugly, but with a characteristic and intelligent face. Lisa was his wife's niece, and he spent all his leisure hours with her. On meeting Anna Karenina, as he was Alexey Alexandrovich's enemy in the government, he tried, like a shrewd man and a man of the world, to be particularly cordial with her, the wife of his enemy. Nothing, he put in with a subtle smile. That's the very best way. I told you long ago, he said, turning to Lisa, that if you don't want to be bored, you mustn't think you're going to be bored. It's just as you mustn't be afraid of not being able to fall asleep if you're afraid of sleeplessness. That's just what Anna Arkadyevna has just said. I should be very glad if I had said it, for it's not only clever, but true, said Anna, smiling. No, do tell me why it is that one can't go to sleep, and one can't help being bored. To sleep well, one ought to work, and to enjoy oneself, one ought to work, too. What am I to work for, when my work is of no use to anybody, and I can't and won't knowingly make a pretense about it? You're incorrigible, said Stremov, not looking at her, and he spoke again to Anna. As he rarely met Anna, he could say nothing but commonplace things to her, but he said those commonplaces as to when she was returning to Petersburg, and how fond Countess Lydia Ivanovna was of her, with an expression which suggested that he longed with his whole soul to please her and show his regard for her, and even more than that. Tushkevich came in, announcing that the party were awaiting the other players to begin croquet. No, don't go away, please don't, pleaded Lisa, hearing that Anna was going. Stremov joined in her entreaties. It's too violent a transition, he said, to go from such company to old Madame Vreed, and besides, you will only give her a chance for talking scandal, while here you arouse none but such different feelings of the highest and most opposite kind, he said to her. Anna pondered for an instant in uncertainty. This shrewd man's flattering words, the naive, childlike affection shown her by Lisa, and all the social atmosphere she was used to, it was all so easy, and what was in store for her was so difficult, that she was for a minute in uncertainty whether to remain, whether to put off a little longer the painful moment of explanation. But remembering what was in store for her alone at home, if she did not come to some decision, remembering that gesture, terrible even in memory, when she had clutched her hair in both hands, she said good-bye and went away.